right. Welcome to those who have just been joining us. We'll get started here in just a couple minutes. Feel free to let us know who you are in the chat so our presenters know who's joining. All right, we'll give people another minute here and then we'll get going. All right, friends, I think we are at our start time, so we'll go ahead and get things rolling, our last breakout sessions of the day. I'm excited to introduce my friends at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte, and they're going to be talking about Agentforce and Experience Cloud. I've got 3 presenters with me today. Jasmine completed her doctorate in educational leadership in May and has been with the university since 2013 in various application developer roles. Michael is an NC native who's been with UNC Charlotte since 2014, working with Salesforce since 2022. And Alex, combining 12 years in higher education with Salesforce expertise gained since 2020. Alex became the newest member of the UNC Charlotte Salesforce team, joining last November. So I'm going to hand it over to them in just a moment. But before I do that, I just want to remind everybody that we do have the Q&A tab in the session that you can add questions to as the session goes on, but we will hold questions until the end. And also there is a poll in the polls tab if you want to take that throughout, and I will hand it over to Alex.
Thanks, Carrie. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So what we're going to go over, we're going to talk about what worked, what didn't, of course, and then what we wish we knew. There's always that part in a Salesforce build where we would have done things differently, right? But to kick us off, I wanted to start by talking about why AI at UNC Charlotte. And there was an effort to support the strategic plan goal that we wanted to partner with colleges and units to reduce redundant systems that create data silos, leveraging enterprise solutions whenever possible, and improving and streamlining business processes while making good decisions for the university. AI agents were used as part of a chancellor initiative, and that's how we wanted to maintain this campus-wide AI experience. As we were talking about our solutions, why Agentforce? We had a number of campus partners that were already using Salesforce across the university. So that made it as kind of a seamless transition for some of them to hit the ground running with using Agentforce. In addition, it allowed us to keep agents using previous conversation context. What we found is that when we tried using the previous Einstein bots, that was something that was a little bit more difficult for the bot, was to maintain that context. And Agentforce service agents really allowed us to do that, while also not allowing disparate departments across campus to have a number of different agents with different platforms. So this allowed us to have one unified experience and also scale that. All right, so talking a little bit about just our general project overview, so where we started. So our goals at Charlotte were to improve service efficiency for students, faculty, staff, and I'm going to throw in families there too. So anyone that was corresponding with the agent. We have both a one-stop kind of service shop and also a one IT agent at this point. Mike will dive into that further in just a few moments, but we wanted the ability for our agent to answer, any of our various constituents or customers, 24/7 on whatever platform they were on. We know that students are going to be having questions probably at 3 a.m. about their financial aid as they sit up and remember something. So we wanted them to be able to have that experience where they could at least get some information to start with and maybe get their full question answered. They didn't have to wait for a case to be opened and then answered the next day via email. We also wanted to optimize, the service specialist workload. As we've, not only increased with our students, we also know that there's a number of questions that they have. And so we wanted to allow those service specialists to spend time on those questions where maybe they couldn't get the answer from the website. And instead, those students had to have those one-on-one interactions, but they could get those questions answered from the agent very easily. Our scope, and I spoke a little bit to this, but we utilized a Salesforce Agentforce service agent to start with. And we integrated that with our knowledge base, our current case management system, which our one-stop shop already used, and then our experience site, which Jasmine will speak further to in just a few moments.
Yeah, so in starting the whole project, you've got to do a lot of time planning and discovery. One of the things with any project, but especially an IT project like this, is you want to make sure that you have all the stakeholders involved, that you've clearly identified who they are, and make sure that you get them involved early. Sometimes with projects like this, you're seeing that certain stakeholders were not necessarily identified initially, and then you're bringing them in later and then having to potentially redo work or make adjustments to what you've already built. So make sure that you have identified those folks early. One of the things we really started out with this was you want to make sure to ask a lot of those key questions when starting out with using Agentforce and AI is, think about which departments at your university are ripe or most ideal to use AI. But also when thinking about that, make sure that we're being realistic in terms of, is that data available for you to consume to have those conversations? Do you have those processes fully identified and spelled out appropriately so that something like Agentforce can have those conversations, using knowledge articles as a base to build its responses off of? Is there the potential to use things like escalations to staff members through a live chat, or doing the cases that are created? But you kind of have to start with that really good, strong foundation of, do I have the data to even have that conversation with Agentforce and the end user? So kind of to that point, starting early in this process, doing those audits of your knowledge article and case data that you've had previously, say you've been in Salesforce for a long time, maybe, and you have a lot of cases that you can draw on to see, like, where are the areas that we get the most questions? And, is it financial aid? Is it something related to parking? Like, kind of diving into that so that you can get the most bang for your buck for a tool like this. But then also doing some of those analysis that is a little more important in the early stages of the project, like looking at your articles. Do you have a lot of overlap between topics? In this case, we were building with the One Stop, as Alex mentioned, that had a very robust process already built for internal knowledge base using Salesforce knowledge articles. And so there was some conversion that had to happen because a lot of those articles were written for an internal audience, and really keeping that in mind. Like, are your knowledge articles phrased in a way that's appropriate for an external audience? You know, are they clear? And we'll talk about that a little bit more later on, but making sure your articles are up to date and everything is the most clear as it can be. Next slide. So as was mentioned, this is kind of a parallel project that we did. So you've got Agentforce that is being implemented, but then you also have the Experience Cloud site for our One Stop that was being created at the same time. So because they're related in some pieces, you've got a bit of glue that's holding them together in terms of being able to chat with the agent in the Experience Cloud site. There's a lot of work that has to be done kind of in the beginning that is very much separate work streams. So with that in mind, you may have staffing capabilities of working in separate work streams and having assigned work to have folks that are working on implementing Agentforce, and then have folks that are working on implementing Experience Cloud separately. So that may be beneficial to you to have kind of separate staff working on those if the availability arises.
Okay, so for the Experience Cloud portion of the project, we had to meet some very specific requirements from our users. So Niner Central needed to transition off their existing website and move to a fully branded Experience Cloud platform experience. It needed to match the look and feel of UNC Charlotte's broader web presence, while also giving users seamless access to the case creation, case management, and of course, Agentforce. Because of these expectations around branding, usability, and integration, the standard Experience Cloud templates were not sufficient for our needs. Thank you. So to meet those specific sets of requirements, we needed a substantial amount of front-end development to deliver a polished, consistent, and user-friendly site. We built an LDR Experience Cloud site from the ground up, ensuring that the design, layout, and navigation all align seamlessly with the university brand standards, as well as accessibility standards between our university communications department and One IT, of course, web division. Because of that, there was an extensive amount of CSS and development of multiple Lightning web components to support the desired functionality and that user experience, specifically to replicate it. So as Michael said, separate streams, this became very apparent. And this is where Michael and Alex took on a lot of Agentforce, and I took on a lot of Experience Cloud. Okay, so one of the specific Lightning Web components that was built was a panel that pre-populated high-value questions students could click that on their selection get injected directly into Charlie, sorry, I'm going to call it Charlie, our Agentforce for an immediate answer. This was a specific request from leadership because as it started off, it was just a chat with us button on the site. They wanted more of the experience that they saw that Salesforce was using, where that component would launch the window and would offer those curated questions. So we built a fully custom solution. Basically, we created, along with this, an object that Niner Central could also manage the content of these questions themselves, so they weren't dependent on us every time they wanted to change one of these questions. So even though it's a lot of Experience Cloud was built, there were several things we built out in Salesforce for them, so they can continue to operate and have the ability to do that. So with that, they can add, remove, edit questions at any time. They're automatically appear on that pop-up without requiring any further development on our side. From there, the front-end components that rendered those questions would send them directly to the agent interface, giving the students a fast guided answer with that. So like this is kind of like the pre-front to engaging with the Agentforce.
So the build process for Agentforce, you've got the initial setup of Agentforce, which is not overly complex. Like you can get some of the very quick setup done, in probably a matter of an hour or two or minimum. It's very straightforward to initially set up things. Where things get a little more time intensive is a lot of these additional steps. So as I mentioned earlier, some of the knowledge base optimization, making sure that you've got, your articles that are formatted kind of appropriately. You've got, dates that are up to date. If you're expecting links to be returned in an appropriate response, make sure that they are in the article. Make sure, like for instance, one of the things that was found, if you're trying to tell them to go to their student portal to go log in and look at something, it's not enough to just say, go to the portal. If you want them to actually be directed there, provide that as a link. Some of the things like that. Again, we were using a lot of things that were previously created articles, and so having to kind of make some adjustments and improvements in terms of how maybe they're written in third person, and it may be more appropriate to have a more direct statement to who you're talking to. Always remember your audience there when you're writing these knowledge-based articles. And you may need to you may find that you need to build out additional topics. I know some of the things that we had were like those escalation topics when you're trying to escalate to a live agent, if it's during business hours. Also, some of those department-specific topics that you may need to address. Again, we're using it right now for our one-stop, but then we also are using it for One IT, so all of our IT help desk things. And there are certain things that required some kind of back and forth discussion with the end user. So if they were having issues logging in to their email, for instance, kind of helping to troubleshoot on the fly there through a back and forth conversation with the end user. So, those are kind of iterative approaches that you have here. As you can see here in the screenshot, this is version 17 of our Agentforce. So having kind of that iterative approach to building out your agent is going to be really useful. Again, testing is very important with something like this. Multiple ways of asking similar questions. We've got Agentforce Testing Center and several other automated testing tools for Agentforce, and use those because they'll come in very handy, especially if you make change to an instruction, and it may seem like a minor change, but always be testing and making sure that change didn't cause any sort of challenges for you if you were going to put that in production. Also, having a QA and QI process once you've gone live with it is extremely important. So one of the things that we built out currently is we have a flow that runs, a scheduled flow that runs every night that will pull a certain number of messaging sessions. I believe it's 10 right now. And it'll basically put them, mark them as available for review. So then we have staff members that can go in, look at the conversations and make sure that it's got an appropriate response. And if it's not, then they can mark that for additional review so that staff can look at it and see if there's any changes that may need to be made to articles or potentially instructions in the agent. So always be kind of monitoring that to make sure that things are going well.
All right, so now that we've talked a bit about the build and configuration itself, let's jump into what worked well, what didn't, and then what we would improve in the future, or growth opportunities. So some basic quick wins. We have a 20% escalation rate, which means that 80% of those users are getting their question answered or are interacting with the bot and are not needing to be escalated in that conversation. In addition, there are reduced response times. So again, hitting that goal of not having students, parents, faculty, staff having to wait on a service specialist maybe to be available from 9 or Central to answer a question about financial aid that they could have, answered by the agent itself. In terms of technical wins, it was really easy to integrate with the knowledge base. So using our data library, again, the stakeholders that we worked with, one of them being 9 or Central, our one-stop, they already had a really broad knowledge base. And our One IT group also had a broad knowledge base in another system. But both of those were able to come in and we were able to integrate them pretty seamlessly through that data library. In terms of workflow automation, we used the Get Omnichannel Agent action, which is an out-of-the-box action for easy escalation through a flow action. So again, there was some easy configuration there, just using standard tools that anyone can, do from an admin to a developer. And then lastly, there were admin-friendly setups. So, we always talk about low-code setups, but in terms of the instructions and the tuning, there's a lot of low-code setup that allows, again, admins to be able to easily do this as well. In addition, we were able to add this to our Experience Cloud site, but also a WordPress site. So our one IT group is on a WordPress site, and that was able to easily add the agent in addition to obviously the Experience Cloud site that Jasmine spoke to. All right. Growth opportunities. So these are some areas where we maybe saw some pain points, and we'll speak to those a little bit further. So one of those was misunderstood intents. And I'm sure that you all probably see this, in just student language itself. Higher ed has a lot of acronyms, very specific language, and maybe some synonyms, but they mean very different things. And so when a student is talking about dropping versus withdrawing, and sometimes they might mean one and not the other, right? So they may be confused about the language they're using, and so it's returning the result of the question they asked, but it's the incorrect result based on what they meant. Of course, anything that has to do with paying their bill, financial aid, grants and scholarship wording, all of those are things that are difficult to parse out, and there's a lot of complexity to those topics. In addition, there were some limitations in Agentforce understanding some of those edge case requests. And I think that we've seen instances where students and even, family members have entered into our agent, Charlie, very specific use cases. I'm this type of student with this specific scenario, and I have this much on my bill, and I want to know about this specific piece of my financial aid package. And I think that that's a place where there is room to grow, but it's, again, for just kind of this base level service agent, it does make it difficult to answer those really complex edge case scenarios. In regards to reporting limitations, this is something where we have not enabled Agentforce analytics and observability yet. We're looking to do that in the beginning of the new year, but we saw that with kind of the, Agentforce analytics stage 1, there were definitely some limitations there. So we had to build some custom data transforms to allow for us to even be able to filter by messaging channel, because a lot of the DMOs and DLOs that were part of Data Cloud already out of the box did not include messaging channel. And so when we were trying to filter our reporting for our two different audiences, one IT and UNC or NC, we weren't able to do that because they have two different messaging channels. We were able to find a way around it, but again, just some things that we're hoping will improve with more of this product. In addition to reporting, just speaking to kind of some of the other growth opportunities that we're hoping to see in the future, there isn't really a way for us to gather feedback about the experience right now. And so we're hoping that observability allows us to use some of that sentiment data to really track that a little bit better. And then, of course, as you all are probably aware, new product pain points with Salesforce, right? There are just some things, especially in this space, where there are releases at times where we maybe weren't expecting it, or changes that were being made on the fly, just for, again, the specificity of this product and how rapidly it's changing in the documentation. And so we're continuing to evolve with those best practices throughout the configuration and as we scale to the future.
Yeah, so several things about what we wish we knew when starting with this project. Since it is such a new field for everyone, Salesforce and just everyone in general is really kind of still figuring out some of these emerging best practices for Agentforce service agents and just agents in general. I know at Dreamforce there were lots of new things that were announced that potentially make some changes to how people deal with agents, and making them more deterministic, and other things that are coming down the pipeline, multi-agents and agent-to-agent discussions that weren't even a conversation even probably 6 months to a year ago. And so things are very just rapidly changing in this space. And so just have some patience if you're working on implementing Agentforce, and know that things may change from time to time. One of the things that we found kind of early on in this implementation was the number of topics that an agent can have wasn't really a stated number. And then, as we went along with this, they had a release that basically said, well, 10 topics is probably a maximum that you should have for an agent. So just keep those in mind, like I said, as things change, just kind of work to potentially make adjustments to how you're doing things. One of the things to also keep in mind is just, and this goes for any project, but specifically for something with AI, make sure that you're setting realistic expectations for things. Make sure everyone is on the same page with implementation about what your metrics are. Make sure that your metrics are clear and that they're actionable and measurable, so that everyone's on the same page to say, yes, this was successful or not in terms of your barometer for success. I think a lot of folks, if you don't set those expectations up front, not everyone is going to necessarily see something as a success or even a failure based on what you've implemented and your reporting that you come back with. Again, make sure that your knowledge base is as specific, clear, optimized as possible. I know with lots of universities, they have very complex processes and business processes for things like billing, or you're dealing with international students, and so many edge cases and variations, but try to be as clear as possible. Try to, again, with your articles, prevent as much overlap or potentially conflicting information as possible, so that you can have the agent answer in the best way possible without causing confusion due to conflicting information.
Okay, so to summarize, here's a quick look at the main tools and resources that supported this project. On our tooling side, we use Salesforce Experience Cloud for our public-facing portal, Salesforce Agentforce Service Agents for our AI components. We also leveraged Data 360, Einstein Replies, and Einstein's work summaries to support accuracy and streamline staff workflows. On the learning side, we relied heavily on Salesforce's resources, so Agent Blazer Trails and the Trailhead modules for building an AI agent with Agentforce, and Salesforce's Help AI solution guides. These were instrumental in keeping us aligned with best practices as we went through the build.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, so we have some questions in the chat for you all. I'm gonna maybe just ask them in order that they came in, since there wasn't upvoting happening. So the first one came in saying the Education Cloud site template offered by Salesforce is Aura only, and Salesforce says their dynamic admissions application features are only guaranteed to work on that site template. Was this problematic for you, or are you not dealing with admissions through this site?
We don't deal with admissions through our site. We use Slate at our university, so that wasn't a requirement for us. So if you're on that, sorry, we got a little more freedom in choosing what framework worked best for our specific set of standards. Michael, do you want to add anything?
And this current environment also, we are not using Education Cloud yet, so that was also not a concern for us.
Great. Okay, next question. Was there any UX expertise needed to build the Experience Cloud portal? And did that UX expert need to understand the Salesforce platform?
So this is where I think we get a little lucky. I've been a web developer for 20 years, I think. So I have UI UX experience. So I was able to utilize that. And because the way we've kind of set up our brand standards at UNC Charlotte, we build that in with the initial UX UI design teams for our staff. So it's a good guide to follow at the beginning. And then if I'm interacting with and putting in components, I can use my knowledge set. So I think just kind of lucky having that person on our team that understood Salesforce made it easier for us to rapidly prototype than if we had to go out and find somebody.
Great, thank you. And I'm pretty sure you said this, but just to confirm for Brian, you are using the Salesforce knowledge base, right?
That's correct. We are using MuleSoft to pull in some articles from another system to create them in Salesforce Knowledge so that it is all in one place. But yes, we are using Salesforce Knowledge to for Agentforce to consume.
And just to clarify, the reason for that is because our Niner Central group was already using Salesforce Knowledge, for the regular case management and as part of their platform. But our One IT group was using another system to manage their knowledge base. And so instead of having them bring all of that into and that entire process into Salesforce, we set up that MuleSoft integration was set up.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question. What was the value of using Experience Cloud site versus WordPress or whatever other kind of site builder you might use?
Excuse me. I think for us, it was the handful of out-of-the-box items that you can pull with objects. We already had SSO built in. We already kind of had a good experience with that versus having to go off and work with our web team. It would have delayed our project, I'll be completely honest, if we had to work with the web team from the ground up on building that. So the handful of components we did use for like the case object, the knowledge base object, those were all ready to go. And we didn't have to build all that from the ground up somewhere else.
Yeah, one of the things that we didn't really mention in our presentation is students can log in through single sign-on and see like their cases that they have with the one-stop and see like the status of where they are and see the answers and all that kind of information. So that was another reason to kind of use Experience Cloud versus just keep their previous WordPress site.
That's really cool. All right, last question that's in here right now. If others have more, please feel free to add. We've got a couple extra minutes. So right now, their last question is, did you set up Data Cloud for any of the agents you showcased? And if so, what types of data did you load into Data Cloud to support them?
Yeah, so we used Data Cloud. Basically, we've been, I don't know how much people have read this, but Salesforce basically says that you need to use Data Cloud for Agentforce. It's kind of a dependency in a lot of ways. And so one of the things we used Data Cloud for was consuming the knowledge articles to be able to chunk them down into the appropriate pieces so that the agent could be able to find and respond with the appropriate articles. And that's pretty much all we are using at this time, because all the other, we didn't really have a lot of other information that we needed to consume for Data Cloud.
Yeah, a lot of our reporting just comes up with the out-of-the-box Agentforce reporting, I guess. And so the two main Agentforce DLOs and DMOs that we're using are Agentforce Service Engagement, and then Service Agent Copilot events. So those are kind of the two objects that are out of the box and really get you a lot of your engagement and event reporting.
Great. Are there other questions from our audience? We've got just a few more minutes before our closing ceremony. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, then I would like to thank our speakers for taking the time to present today and share your great story with us. I'm really excited to see where you take this. And yeah, please do. Thank you for putting this slide up. A couple of things I might add here. One, we're going to be having a closing ceremony over in the session soon, so please join us for that. Also, there's a link in the event chat, and we'll be sharing this with you more in a moment about giving our sessions and our event some feedback. So please use that link. And thank you so much, and we'll see you over in the closing.
Thanks everybody.